It's really awesome to see just how much fighting games have evolved over the past few years, because when you think about the state of that particular video game genre in 2023 and even the past decade, you got games like Tekken, Street Fighter, these huge tournaments with a lot of prize money and just the overall culture. But when you take it back to like the 90s, it was all about the arcades. It was that pop in the coin experience and you play Street Fighter 2. In my case, even though I did have somewhat of an experience playing fighting games in the arcades, it wasn't up until the PlayStation 1 that I really became, I've always been a casual gamer in that. I'm not going to say I was competitive or anything like that, but I began to appreciate those games. Yeah, I played Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo. I played Mortal Kombat. But I remember when there was that shift to 3D gaming and I played Tekken, which came out in 1994. I was like, 5 to 6 years old, but going from sprites to 3D was simply mind-blowing. So I thought that in this video, thinking about the recent hype about Tekken 8 and all that stuff, I'd actually go back and play a little bit of Tekken 2 and talk about that experience going back and just reminisce on the PlayStation 1 and why I think I connect so much with the PlayStation consoles as a whole. So hey everybody, hope you're doing awesome. My name is Juan, and if you like everything that I do, please subscribe, and I'm super happy to be back here and connecting with different topics that I really do enjoy. And I also value your feedback with my previous video talking about what happened with the channel. So I'm here experimenting a more laid-back, chill format, but still talking about that which we love, which are some video games. So for this video, I had to use my PS3, of course. One of the biggest benefits of the PS3 is the backwards compatibility. Even though not all of them are backwards compatible with PS2, they are so with PS1 games, which is still mind-blowing to me just how many people comment to this day on videos that I put out in 2020, 2021, and they're like, I have a launch console and I never did that. It's like, come on, the games were on the store and all that. But hey, that's beside the point. So I played a digital version of Tekken 2 because I don't have a physical copy, although I would love to have that. But I remember the shift from Tekken 1 to 2 was very impressive because the first one came out in 94, the second one came out just a year later in 95, and then later we got Tekken 3, which that is just one of the best fighting games of all time, at least in my opinion. But with Tekken 2, I feel like they understood what 3D gaming was in the fighting game scene, because as somebody that played hours, I played easily over 100 hours of Tekken Tag Tournament. I played Tekken 6, 7, 5, 4, 3. I guess I played all of them, even though I'm not like a big fighting game guy, but just Tekken, there's a sentimental value to it, right? With the first one, as good as it was very chunky, it was clunky. The movement, the way everybody moved, like they were kind of dancing. You had something similar with Virtua Fighter maybe, but I think Virtua Fighter from day one, when they made the shift to 3D, they did a much better job of just the presentation. With Tekken, there was potential. But then the second one came out, and from the character select screen, you began to see a little bit more personality in the characters and the movement. Seriously, like I played Tekken Tag Tournament HD on the PS3 a couple of months ago, and going back to 2, yeah, it's obviously not, the most visually pleasing game to talk about, but from a mechanical standpoint, you're like, hey, you got it right pretty early on. And I've seen this conversation within the fighting game community, even when games like Dragon Ball Fighters, and there's like the simplified combo system. Some people would complain like, oh, you're making this way too accessible. To somebody like me, that's actually helpful, because one of the points that made me kind of fall off the rails with Tekken, and I guess a lot of fighting games, is I play games, people, to have fun. I know. I know that's like a very controversial topic, but games to me are about fun. And even though, yeah, I did get competitive with third-person shooters, first-person shooters, and even with fighting games, you inevitably want to win. Kind of like a racing game. It's like, you don't want to be the second person. Ideally, you'd like to win. And as good as I got with these games, even with Tekken 2, once you began with Tekken 3 and onward, like the combo systems became amazing and outrageous. And for the people that would memorize stuff, that was awesome. But for somebody like me, Tekken 2 is like going back to its roots. Even to this day, you'll see some threads pop up about people talking about which is the best Tekken game of all time. You have a similar conversation between Mortal Kombat 2 and 3. You know, Mortal Kombat 2 was a lot more basic in its essence. And then by the time you got to Ultimate Mortal Kombat, it's like, okay, people, like I can do a combo with like square, triangle, X or something, but I'm not going to memorize this whole thing. And I think the best character with Tekken that brings me back to that is King. I'm a huge wrestling fan, so what really brought me into Tekken was first the 3D aspect, but then it was the characters, and there's always the 3 pillars for me, and that's Law, Paul, and King. To this day, whenever I play a Tekken game, I use a variation of the 3 characters. I would love to know, when talking about Tekken, which was the first game that you played, of any, and then also let me know like which was your favorite character. Let me know in the comments. But for me, I think it was first Law, and it was because he was the martial arts character, and that's what I associate it with most regarding video games, right? Same thing with Faye, and I think there's like all these variations of Bruce Lee in just like 1,000 fighting games. But the character that really stuck out to me was King. I've been a wrestling fan since the days of ECW, WCW, WWF, then WWE, and just from the mask to the gruntiness and all that stuff. Same thing with Wolf Hogfield and Virtual Fighter. I think that's like one of the only reasons I wanted to get into those games, which I sucked at, but I had somewhat of fun playing them. But a character like King in a time where wrestling games were still figuring, themselves out. We got the SmackDown games a little bit later and all that stuff, but early 90s wrestling games, at least for me, they weren't exactly all that great. I was also very young and wasn't really into any of them, especially in the Super Nintendo era. King was like the closest I could get to a proper wrestling character. So that was a case where I would later try to figure out the combos, and in Tekken Tag, I don't remember them. But in this game, I love the grounded nature of, hey, there's the grapples, you can move around a little bit, and there is fluidity once you figure out some combinations. But otherwise, it is still a little bit more stiff. And honestly, I don't think that's bad. I remember a lot of times where I've tried to play just fighting games with friends, and inevitably, we just end up mashing the buttons. I think that's what maybe like a good 70% of people did, even back in the day. But with Tekken 2, I love the simplicity of, okay, Law, I definitely want to do more kick-based stuff. He does a lot more flippy stuff. He's a little bit faster. I like his grapples. I like his style. With Paul, he's more punch-based. And then with King, I would try to just do all the wrestling maneuvers, all the grapples, all the little techniques like that. You'd have characters like Jack too, which Jack is like a fascinating character to think about in the context of Tekken, right? Where every game he would just look very different, and then as the story modes would eventually progress, they'd do something with that. If the question was like, should you still play it in 2023? Honestly, I think the answer is yes, because when I began to look at the trailers for the latest Tekken game, it's like, yeah, the games look good, but it's kind of hard to make a game that looks bad nowadays. I like the idea with going back to a game like Tekken 2 that visually it doesn't hold up, because it just doesn't. From a retro standpoint, it's like, hey, it's cool to appreciate that, but like, let's be honest, it doesn't look too great. So you're stripping down its visual nature, and you're like, just give me the gameplay. I'm just judging it based on the gameplay. And I think that's one of the biggest things that the Super Nintendo, more often than not, got more points for than the PS1. Like, the sprites just hold up so much better. And a lot of these fighting games, it's like even a game like Soul Edge, hey, you saw the groundwork for what would eventually become Soul Calibur, but it's like you go back to that and visually it does look rough. But with Tekken 2, the mechanics are solid. It feels like the game that you've been playing for, jeepers, I was gonna say over a decade. It's like we're reaching 3 decades at this point. Have we reached 3? Okay, I'm not okay with this conversation, people. I gotta stop feeling so freaking old. Like, my channel was about the previous generation and the PS3. We're up to 5, so we're 2 generations back. I'm talking, oh my goodness, okay. I need some support right now. But I would love to know, it's like, how far often do you go back to the first or the sequel of a certain game or genre just to appreciate where it came from? Like a good example could be like a game like Grand Theft Auto, whether it be the first or second. Everybody just automatically assumes the third was like the first. I know a lot of people that just thought it's like, I guess that's what they titled it. It's like, no, there were actual other games before that one. And you get to respect and appreciate the evolutions of games. And I think at the end of the day, that's what I want this channel to still really be about. That's what motivates me to hit a record button. That's what still motivates me to play games today. When I think about what I'm playing the most, it's like I have a gaming computer, we have a PS5, we have the Xbox One X, the series, and all that stuff. But there's beauty in the simplicity of older generations that had a lot of limitations, so they had to get super creative with something. And I feel like now we focus far too much on the visual quality of a game. But I'm like, if you just undress that game, is it really that different from the previous ones? And in the case of Tekken, throughout the years, I appreciate that it is still the same core. They try to implement a little bit more fluidity. The graphics obviously look a lot better. But Tekken to me is Tekken. Yeah, going back to Tekken 2, a character like Law, there's moves he still didn't have, and they would later incorporate. Paul's hair, I guess, with every game. They're like, okay, now it's down, now it's up, now it's like super long, now it's like 10 feet long, now whatever. But I just wanted to just share these thoughts about Tekken 2, a game that I'm super nostalgic for. I would love to own a copy of both Tekken 1 and 2. So if you have any positive or awesome memories about these games, I really would love to know. At the same time, if there's any other suggestions about these throwback discussions that you would like me to just bring up here on the channel, let me know. There's some follow-up things that I do want to do for things that I discussed back in 2021 and I didn't sort of continue. So I'm excited because, I talked a lot about Mortar Storm and all that. So I think I am going to carry over that conversation in future videos. So thank you so much. Before we just close this off, I do want to just take another minute and just saying how thankful I am, as I said in the What Happened video, for people that over a year later, after I stopped posting videos, would openly say, hey, I miss your content, I miss your channel. And seeing all of you respond to the previous video really did motivate me to be like, hey, the same way I'm talking about stripping down and playing a game, not me stripping down, I do want to clarify that, stripping down Tekken 2, and you know what I'm talking about. I've been talking about this for over 10 minutes now. I want this channel to almost be like a throwback YouTube channel, if it makes any sense, where I don't want to have a script anymore. I just want to talk with people that have similar interests than that of my own. And if we have a good time, guess what? It's pretty friggin' awesome. So up until next time, thank you for watching and supporting, and take care, everybody.